This is an exceptionally long video, and for that I apologize. I also apologize that I filmed it way back in February on my computer, so the quality is very subpar. But I had a lot of important things to say, and if you want to find the good bits, look below. So, enjoy. I'm going to talk about The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. My mom got the copy from the library, and I finally got to read it, and I read it all on Sunday. So that tells you that it was at least compelling enough for me to continue to read it within one day. And at the same time, it's a young adult novel, so I can read it in a day. So, I had a couple of thoughts about it. Now, let's start with the good and move on to the bad or not so good. Good. I like that it deals with some of the big topics that some of my favorite works of literature deal with. And even though it frustrates me sometimes, I like that it targets these topics, it deals with them with a younger audience than myself, who is 23 years old. Two of the ideas that I noticed in here that I really liked, because they reminded me of some of my favorite works of literature, were the idea of attention and what you pay attention to being the most important thing, which you find again and again in the works of David Foster Wallace, which is pretty much the whole point of why David Foster Wallace wrote The Pale King and never finished. And the second theme that came up a lot was the idea of being an absolute nobody, which you find in Franny and Zooey, where Franny goes on, and she's so despondent because she's sick of not having the courage to be an absolute nobody. A quote that's near and dear to my heart. I liked how it ended with her eulogy. I thought that was a really interesting way to solve the whole issue reflected back upon the entire time, which was basically John Green asking himself, how am I going to end this? In the guise of an imperial affliction. I only wish that she hadn't responded at the end by saying, I do, which kind of really withdrew the power from me of just ending with her eulogy. I understand that ending with her eulogy, which is the words of someone else, would have been sort of similar to ending with in the middle of a sentence, but it wouldn't be as abrupt. I think it would be really powerful because it was her reading her eulogy, but at the same time, it was eulogizing her throughout the course of the book, so that was really interesting. I liked that. I also liked, number 3, was that I think a far less talented and more literal writer could have made this just a pure sob story, a la other cancer genre books. I thought that, you know, when it was painful, as in dealing with death, dealing with characters' deaths, it wasn't dragged out and just for the sake of effect. It was every time it reached a painful element, it was purposeful. And so, for example, when J.K. Rowling dragged out the death of Dumbledore for like 5 million chapters, and you were just sobbing for 5 million chapters, and you're just like, J.K., come on. That wasn't going on here. It wasn't just like, let's drag the knife into your chest for 5 chapters for no reason whatsoever, just to belabor the point. He never belabored the point. So that's the third thing that I really liked about this book. Now, one peeve I have, which I always have, but this is just me having the hipster impulse in all of us, which is basically I get a little bit peeved when he intros nerdfighteria to some of my favorite things, like when he had the little beginning, people say friends don't destroy one another, what do they know about friends? In paper towns. I loved that song, and of course he's allowed to love it, and he's allowed to use it in his work, and blah blah blah, and people are allowed to discover it through his works, and yes, these are all true facts, but still. No, and then in this one it was something less something that I even think of as my own, which is just the Red Wheelbarrow poem, which I quite like. Number 2, second pet peeve, is just sort of the lack of subtlety, which I got over in Paper Towns, and get over here just by telling myself, hello. It's a young adult book. It's not intended for people who are more interested in reading fragmentary metafiction of, you know, the 1990s. And the third thing, there's a running theme throughout the book about the possibility or the truthfulness of what I call the idea of a yingless yang. What is a yingless yang? It goes throughout the book. She first encounters it in Gus's house when she discovers the encouragement, which says, without pain, how could we know joy? And then she says, Hazel says, which I don't think John Green was trying to just have this be her idea, but not his idea. I think he would agree with this, or that this was the idea being proposed and being supported by this work of literature, which, so she goes on to say, this is an old argument in the field of thinking about suffering, and its stupidity and lack of sophistication could be plumbed for centuries, but suffice it to say that the existence of broccoli does not in any way affect the taste of chocolate. Now, I disagree. I think, yeah, things are not, if we're talking about the emotion spectrum, like sort of the Donnie Darko thing of how things are not just fear or love, or things are not just joy or pain, you know, things are not just up or down. Yeah, there's existence of gray, that's a valid point, but he wasn't going there. He was going more for the fact that one does not affect the other, which makes no sense in a work of fiction like this. Opposing things like broccoli and chocolate, when taken together, serve to make the other more noticeable. For example, two kids with cancer falling in love with each other. Cancer is sad, love is happy. Each of these facts serves to make the other one more noticeable. The reason the story is so painful is because of the existence of two of these things at one time. Why else is Hazel's pain at his death worse than his former friends? She knew more joy with him, so she knows more pain at his loss. Otherwise, she would only feel the slight sting when his name is on the list of dead enumerated at the end of each meeting. Secondly, it comes up again in a different context when her father, I guess, says, what a day, if we lived in California, they'd all be like this. And then her mom says, yeah, but then you wouldn't enjoy them. And then she says, she was wrong, but I didn't correct her. And so that's basically her negating, again, she does not support the idea that one determines the other. Obviously, these two facts are not linked. You can enjoy constant good weather. You can enjoy this. You can enjoy it more each day. But as each day passes, it becomes less noticeable to you. You have to put more effort into noticing this fact. Whereas, if you just had a bunch of rainy days, the first sunny day after all those rainy days is a renewal, almost. You see everyone go outside, you see people jogging, you see people taking walks, taking their dogs out, riding their bikes, you know, etc., because they're celebrating the fact that it's such a wonderful day and they've noticed it, okay? And so I think in this story, when he makes such a big deal of touching on the same theme that David Foster Wallace touches on, which is basically the whole game, is what you pay attention to and what you don't. That's all of it. Why I'm saying he is dealing with the same kind of attention theme that maybe David Foster Wallace was interested in is because at a number of points, basically, she's wondering how can her life have any meaning, or more importantly, Gus is wondering this, does his life have any meaning if he's going to die when he's 17? And how does her life have any meaning if she's going to die when she's 16, or however old they are? I'm not quite sure. So basically, you know, it's not going to have any long arching meaning, but none of our lives are. Basically, all she can do while she's alive is pay attention to things and try and memorize them and go through lives, and she attaches the meaning to things by her attention. And that's what the whole ball game's about. But this conflicts with the idea that two different emotions exist in isolation of one another. the fact of one existing prompts the attention to go toward the fact of the other's existence. So the tragedy or the pain allows you to attribute more meaning to the joy. If you just had constant joy, well, it would become normalized. So basically what I'm saying is I don't really see how his argument functions in conjunction with his desire to elaborate upon the attention point. That's how I see it, and that's the major flaw for me in this work.